Welcome back to episode 2 of Kaiyo Collabs, the series where you're going to see me working with another producer to build and create a song together as a collaboration. In this week's episode, I caught up with fellow lo-fi producer Moat. You also know him as YouTuber Luke Daly. And we came up with this really dreamy lo-fi track. Let's jump into FL Studio and get to it. So I've just been working on this track. I'm really enjoying how it sounds. So I'm just going to break down what I've got so far and we'll go from there. As always, I started here with the Originals Cinematic Soft Piano as my piano VST of choice. And we've got these really lovely dreamy chords. Playing in a D sharp major scale, so we're starting there with a D sharp major. I've suspended the 3 into a 4, so it's D sharp major suspended 4. A couple of joining notes leading us into an A sharp major suspended 4, and then playing that same chord again, this time just the A sharp major. And then that repeats again with some slightly different intonations and joining notes. Layer that with a drone sound. This is the Labs Azure piano to just give us some gorgeous ambient cinematicness to the track. And then I layered in a second piano, just playing a simple walking pattern. And on that piano there, I just turned the pad mix up to about 50%, so you get a nice little bit of reverb in the background. From there, I laid in a really simple sub bass. Just following the root notes of the chords. That's playing on the Labs Opia sub bass, one of my favorite bass VSTs at the moment for a really lovely, warm, subby frequency. And then I started layering in some drums before I moved on to a guitar line. So I started here with a kick, a snare, and then layered in just a really simple hi-hat pattern. And there we have like a really gorgeous loop. The only thing that's missing from here is some sort of a melody. So I came up with this guitar top line melody that I think sounds really lovely. And as always, I layered that with a guitar arp. And then a second guitar arp. And all of my guitar is going through an EQ, just cutting off the lows there, and then Guitar Rig 7 running the Clean Cave preset. So here is how the top line with the arps sounds with everything else. I started thinking about building some sort of an intro here, thinking about the arrangement. So I wanted to start the track with a guitar part, but I didn't think this top line was exactly right. So I came up with this guitar line here. I then chopped out the parts of that I really liked and sort of arranged it to be this kind of intro where it fades in and then you get kind of a second part there as the pianos come in. I then layered in that first guitar arp to fade in also. So this is how the intro to the track's currently sounding. And at this point, I'm really loving how this is sounding, and I think I know just the person that I want to reach out to for a collab. I'm going to send this over to my friend Moat and hope that he can add his style to this track and we can create a really lovely track together.
Hey, my name is Luke. I'm a music producer based in the United States. I make sleepy, sort of ambient lo-fi under the artist name Moat. And similar to Kaiyo, I do a lot of beat breakdowns and lo-fi tutorials on my own YouTube channel. A huge thank you to Kaiyo for having me on the channel and asking me to hop on this track with him. It was a super beautiful loop and I was really excited to hop on and see what I could add to it. So let's hop in FL Studio and see exactly what I did. So right out of the gate, like I said, I really loved the sample Kaiyo sent over. I felt like it had this nice intro into the first drop structure kind of baked in already. And I felt like it was full enough to kind of fill the first drop on its own. I knew I wanted this to be a really minimal, very sleepy, pretty ambient track. So I didn't want to do anything to make it too busy right in the first drop. So I just kind of left the melodic elements as they were. Did a tiny bit of EQing, like with the guitar. I did kind of a goofy EQ curve to just keep it in those low mids and leave some space for some elements I was adding later. And then just a little bit of side chaining to the bass, that arpeggiating guitar to really help solidify the pulse that the kick was creating. And then I side changed it to some layers that I added down the road. Other than that, the only things that I changed, I added this rain sound that continues throughout the track, Foley loop that swells in throughout the intro, also continues throughout the track, and a percussion loop that's kind of helping with the driving motion of that first drop. And then the one other change I did before I started adding melodic elements later on was I just swapped out the hi-hat for something a little bit softer, and I even ended up EQing even more of the highs out of the sample that I brought in, just to help keep it in that really mellow kind of ambient space. So I imagine you've just heard the sample that Kaiyo sent over, so let's just hop right into where I started switching things up here with this key part that I added to what ended up being the bridge section. So my big goal here was to essentially give the ears a break from that nice low mid guitar line that Kaiyo laid down, just to make sure it didn't get too repetitive and sort of introduce a new melodic element that we could play with a little bit later on. The way I did that is I just wanted to follow the motion and sort of complement the motion that was going on in the piano that Kaiyo already had. So you'll notice that we've got this higher octave key part that's mixed pretty differently from the main key part. And there's a lot of places where that's moving completely together or complementing the chord strikes. There's a couple places where we're filling in dead space, treating it a little bit more like a call and response. As far as the processing on that goes, I just took an old favorite, Lab Soft Piano. I sent that to a mixer channel, of course, put on a little bit of OTT at a 34% depth and a 4.7 dB output gain. I feel like this really does a great job of bringing out a lot of the mechanical sounds that are sort of hidden away in the Lab Soft Piano. I sent that into an RC20, which is adding a tiny bit of wobble, a good bit of distortion on the tube pair setting, a good bit of reverb, and then a little bit of the magnetic effect. And then after that, I've got a Valhalla Supermassive directly on the singular mixer track. So rather than doing like a parallel processing in this case, I really wanted the piano to be washed out way in the back, reverbed out as its own like independent texture and voice on the song. Got it on the massive vocal preset. It's a pretty large preset with a long tail, mixed at 45%. And then finally, just to make sure I didn't have any low end rumble that tends to pile up when you use these really big EQs, I just did a nice gentle high pass right around 200 Hertz to keep all this high piano focused up in the high end. So after the full loop Kaiyo sent over, this was the bridge that I ended up coming up with here. So nothing too crazy going on. I didn't want to, contract the bridge too much. I wanted to keep it feeling relatively full and just have this piano be the new driving force in that section. Did add an additional Foley loop just to help keep the percussive textures evolving. So now by this point, we've introduced a third different Foley loop, which continues throughout the track layered together with the other two that we've added beforehand. And then in this last drop, I brought the main guitar that Kaiyo laid down back in and laid down my own higher octave, pretty much matching the melody. I think I got all the notes right, but I could have missed a couple or might have embellished a little bit here and there. So listen, it's just those two together is what we ended up with. So as far as my recording chain goes for that guitar line, I've got an EQ right out of the gate because for whatever reason on this day, my signal chain was particularly noisy. So I was trying to get rid of some of this high hiss that was coming in through my signal chain. Can't even tell you why. I've got kind of a beat up old Epiphone on the wall behind me, but sometimes I can work around it. I got a couple peaks and pulled a lot of low end out just to make sure I wasn't stepping on that nice low mid guitar that we had already. And then I ran that signal into the Archetype Pliny Electric Sunrise intro preset. And the only change I made on this preset was again taking out even more of the low end, a complete -12 cut at 65 hertz, kind of growing from there as like a soft roll off all the way up to 500 hertz. Finally, we've got a fruity limiter here. This is just acting as a sidechain compressor from the kick. And then finally one more low roll off to make sure that we're not stepping on that low melody and leaving plenty of room for the bass in the track. So as this octave guitar comes in, I also kept the piano around, sort of playing as this like counter melody thing, repeating a simplified version of the same melody that I was playing before. I essentially took out a lot of the chord strike notes and just had the moving notes that were playing in between major chord strikes. And you end up with this really nice call and response between those two guitars that are playing in one place. And then in the empty places, you got this nice familiar piano melody from the previous section. And then finally, before I play through this second drop, I did add one more harmony guitar layer, which I felt like really transformed it, brought the energy up, and made this more of a climactic second drop, just to really bring the whole thing home. As far as processing on that goes, I ran it through the same effects chain as this octave guitar, and then did a little bit more EQing to make sure there's absolutely no low end stepping on the other two guitar parts. And then a little bit of compression to make sure it's all glued together and nothing's poking out too aggressively. And then I just widen it out about 31%. Altogether, that second drop ends up sounding like this. And then from there, I just bounced the full arrangement stems and sent them back over to Kaiyo to put on the finishing touches. So thank you again, Kaiyo, for having me on the channel. Thank you for asking me to be on this track with you. I really like how it came out. I'm super excited for it to be released. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
So here it is. This is the final track. And shout out to my friend Moat for jumping on this track with me. I really, really love what he did with it. Yeah, I really didn't do too much at all to this after Luke sent it back. I did a little bit of mixing, a little bit of mastering. And yeah, this is how the track is sounding. I won't play you the whole track. I'll just play you this bridge and then a little bit of this outro so you can get an idea how that track's sounding. Now this has been super fun to work on with my friend Moat, and do keep an eye out because I'm sure we'll be working on more music together soon. If you don't already, go and follow Luke's YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description to this video along with all of his socials and everything else. Do go and give him a follow and check out his music. And if you like what you're hearing from this track so far, do head over to Spotify because we are releasing this track. It is out today on all streaming platforms. So head over to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen, and give this track a stream. It will really help out myself and Moat as independent artists and creators. As always, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button and that like button. That helps push this video out to more people. So yeah, that's the end of episode 2 in this series. If you're enjoying this series so far, drop a comment below. Let me know producers or artists that you want to see me work with, and maybe I'll reach out to them and maybe you'll see them in a future episode. But yeah, that's all from me.